I'm having a little bit of feedback when I speak.
You are?
How do I, should I just try and ignore that? Oh, that's better. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. This is really exciting because this is the second time I've spoken at Kate's class. I'm going to turn on my screen share and show you this pretty nerdy photo from the last time I came to visit. And we did this in real life, which was pretty stinking cool. All right. You are screen sharing. Are you screen sharing? Are you seeing things?
Yep.
So please tell me what you can see. And someone holler if like anything goes weird with the technology side of things. There's a lot to cover here, so I'm gonna do my best to make it, you know, as understandable and within an appropriate amount of chunks. So yeah, so this is last time Kate had me and my partner Chad, this lumberjack looking dude in the lower right-hand corner, come and do a workshop with y'all, which was super fun. So I'm really happy to be back. I think the Friends of Graphic Design program at Portland State is lovely, and I'm so jealous I don't go to your school. Like, I kind of wish we can hang out all the time. So that's really cool. So like Max said, I do a lot of branding. Here's some examples of some logos I've done for restaurants, startups, small businesses, various sort of like, I don't know, any type of like creative company. I like to work with those. And yeah, so like, you know, these logos are just a small piece of like the various brand, you know, collateral or websites that get extrapolated from there. Just a little bit of a taste of what I do, so you can see some of the actual work. If you guys want to talk about some of these specific projects, we can do that at the end. Like Kate said, I'm going to spend most of the time talking to you about the business side of design, which I don't know about you guys, but when I was in school, I was just like so overwhelmed with like, oh my God, life, and oh my God, how do I like work Photoshop? And, you know, just, it's a lot to take in. And I really like, honestly, didn't even have time to think about things like budgets or contracts or the various pieces that go into the final end result that you can see on the screen here. You know, depending on where you're at, I think, you know, everyone's going to have a little bit of a different comfort level in terms of how comfortable they do feel talking about money or talking about managing clients, and the actual kind of like nuts and bolts of running any kind of business. So, you know, I encourage you to sort of put that aside for today, and then just, you know, because we're going to cover a lot, listen and think of your questions. The Skillshare classes go into all this stuff much more in depth. So really this is just more of a tease. So yeah. So here's another project. I do some illustration here and there. I have like a very early level kind of nascent art practice that I've been working on as sort of a personal work that I've just been doing on the side to, like I'll post stuff on Instagram here and there about it, just to kind of get me off the computer a little bit because, you know, being a graphic designer and also doing a lot of websites, it's a lot of staring at pixels and going boxes all day. So, and because, you know, I did go, you know, I have an art degree, even though I didn't go to an art school. It's nice to be able to flex those muscles too sometimes. So here's an example of that. These were in a cookbook, a paleo soup cookbook. I found this particular client through a mutual friend. The woman who wrote the cookbook was trying to launch a health and wellness company through Kickstarter, and the cookbook was all of these recipes that she'd written, you know, as the reward for funding the project. So the project was successfully funded, so we got to make the cookbook, and then, you know, I helped her build her brand and her website and launch her business, you know, really effectively. So that was cool. This is a website for actually a shop that's in Portland. Maybe you guys know it. It's called Tilda Shop. I should have looked up the neighborhood before I got on here, but it's like sort of a cute accessories, home accessories, bags, lots of jewelry here, cute stationery. So this project was commissioned through a web design company that I work with, and, you know, sort of on a contract basis called AO Lydia, which is an e-commerce website design company. So this company, we work everywhere. We're all over the country, all over the world now. It's a pretty small company, but it allows me to sort of stay where I am and sort of work on my own time and schedule my own hours and all those things that are really helpful when you have a freelance life. Flexibility is important whenever you can get it. Great. So this is the last project I'm going to show right now is a book I designed for an architecture firm here in Chicago called Studio Gang Architects. They've got a couple of pretty noteworthy projects. If you're familiar with Chicagoland architecture at all, if you ever visit, you'll definitely see some of their work. It's also a woman-run architecture company, which there are very few of those in the world. This book was commissioned because they were doing an art show at the Art Institute of Chicago, and this book was the sort of encapsulation of the art show. So that was a really fantastic, amazing project, like dream client, dream, to be able to say that, work that I've done has been in the Art Institute of Chicago feels pretty cool. So major milestone. But, it wasn't always like this. So, it's really easy to like look at these sort of beautiful photos and like, feel like you've missed all the steps that got to this point. So I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of how I got started and really like, I have really pretty humble beginnings. I went to a state school. I went to UW-Madison, which, I think is like pretty on par with where you guys are at in terms of, it's not RISD. It's not one of these like highfalutin, like the Art Institute of Chicago. Their art school is like crazy, So it's already felt like it was a different dynamic coming into the work world with people who, had a different level of study or for whatever reason. So, going to a state school where I had like a really liberal arts background, an art focus with like a few graphic design classes thrown in at the end. They didn't even make us have a portfolio. Like I was one of the only people in my class that year that was like, I have to have a portfolio because I don't have a safety net. I can't move back to Minneapolis where I grew up and live in a 1-bedroom apartment with my mother. I love her, but no, thank you. And this was like really the only way out for me. So, my friend offered me a spot on her floor in Chicago. Her apartment was too small for even a couch to sleep on. So I said yes. I moved to her floor, a patch of her floor, and I had $500 in 2 suitcases. And that's how I showed up in Chicago. I knew 2 people. I had no job prospects. This was early 2000s. So like, I feel like not in the height of 9/11 craziness. It was like a weird period between 9/11 and like the, retail housing crash. So, there was work to be had, but it was still sort of a strange time to be entering the work world. So I just like really hoped and prayed and hustled for a job. I babysat for a long time until I was able to get a paid internship. And eventually that paid internship evolved into a job I was working in-house as a graphic designer for a family of retail businesses in the city here. It's a high-end furniture shop, custom framing shop, and an art gallery. So, and like, I don't know, I feel like there's this sort of like stigma of working in-house, that it's sort of like, not as flexible. It's not as interesting because, you're doing one type of work for one client, you really sort of get as much of a range and style sometimes. But I have a lot of respect for in-house graphic design, or more commonly these days, that's like where people are working at startups. They usually have an in-house graphic design team for the most part. It's really similar in that your clients are your coworkers, which is a really interesting dynamic because you see these people all the time. So it really teaches you a lot about how to kind of discuss the work appropriately, how to get your ideas accepted, and like working in a multi-age, multi-generational, anything dynamic with people who aren't like you, 24/7 is a really actually a great way to learn how to talk about your work and collaborate on things. So I have a lot of respect for that. And I recommend it at some point in your career, possibly. The downside of this particular job that I was doing at that point was it was just kind of like a not great work environment, some toxic people, and the pay was terrible, like really pretty minimal. I think I was making like $25,000 a year, which, this was like 2006 with student loans was, I mean, that was a real tough life. And I was working 6-7 days a week with like side babysitting or, trying to do some freelance on the side just to kind of build my portfolio and also just like have money to save. And I knew there wasn't going to be any kind of like long-term potential at this job. So I ended up working with a staffing agency. I'm sure you guys have those here and there in Portland. But they're great if you move to a new city and you don't have a lot of connections to help you kind of get your portfolio and get interviews at places you wouldn't necessarily have gotten without connections. So this staffing agency found me a job at a kind of like a small boutique graphic design studio that specialized in brand packaging and branding. So by packaging, I mean like, I don't know, like I worked on like Orbit's gum design like a few years ago, or this was probably close to 10 years ago now, but they had bigger name clients, which was pretty exciting to move from a very small pond, being a big fish in a small pond to being a tiny fish in a huge pond. So, that was great in terms of just, I don't know what it's like to set up a production file for like a complex packaging piece of material that has to go to China, or, what it means to have, your client who maybe, twice your age, who has really nothing in common with you, but you just happen to be working at the same companies at the same time, so, and, I actually quite liked that job. I had a decent amount of creative autonomy. The hours were reasonable. I really liked my coworkers. I felt like I could advance there. The only problem is that, so the kind of financial world imploded. And this was a small company that tried to grow too quickly. They hired on a ton of staff, maybe 3 or 4 months before they really maybe even understood that there was a recession happening, and they let half the company go one day just without any kind of warning. So that was definitely like, well, now what kind of moment. At that point, I didn't have any savings to speak of particularly. I didn't have any plan. The only potential inkling that I had was like, I'm going to start a blog. I wanted to start a design blog. Blogging was still kind of a, new thing in the internet those days. I thought maybe I could get something started if I put this blog up. And I had my best friend, my roommate at the time, is a graphic designer as well, and a front-end developer. So she helped me set up in WordPress at this point, just thinking like, well, this will hopefully be something for me. And, the internet was still small at that point. So any blog that had any kind of non-blogger template to it was easier to get traffic and easier to get notice on. There weren't so many people on social media. So if you showed up and had a regular presence there, it was pretty easy to get business actually. However, it wasn't, I was still learning so much. I ended up doing a lot of, I call it permalance, which is basically you are working 9 to 5 at a company, any agency or a design studio, for an hourly rate. You don't have job security. You don't have any benefits. They can let you go at any time. But it's flexible in that, if you want to do 2 weeks here, a month here, 6 weeks there, that's a good way of making money really quickly if there's a lull in clients. So I did that for probably regularly, off and on, for 4 or 5 years in the birth of this business, which this was all going on in 2008. So I'm 8 years in at this point. And I don't do the permalance thing anymore because I do have enough clients to exist without going into someone else's office. But I will say that I do think it is, it's certainly, and a lot of places will need staff, short term. Someone goes on vacation, someone goes on maternity leave, they get a big project they're not prepared for. So it is possible to exist exclusively and do well just doing that. But I knew I wanted to build my own client base. And so I really had to fight for that. And, a lot of this information that I'm going to be giving you today is just like so hard won. There weren't the kind of resources that there are now. There wasn't Skillshare then. There really wasn't a lot of people talking about this kind of stuff. So that's why I make it a priority to kind of share this information with students. Because, if it had been me in your shoes, like it would have been really great to have this. And, you know, I also want to show that you don't have to come from money. You don't have to have like some kind of crazy viral Kickstarter project or tons of Instagram followers or even really be a known name to make a solid life for yourself as a graphic designer or a creative person, like however you want to interpret the way that you work in the world. So it is entirely possible to bootstrap yourself, and I'm 100% proof of that. So, you know, I think that's like just really refreshing that, you know, it can be done, and it is hard, but it's definitely doable. So, all right, how are we doing on time? I think I'm good. All right, so here's just the real overview of what I'm going to cover in the rest of this talk. So, getting started, client management, contracts, fine print, all that, and then like the financial side of things. So, I'm going to spend the most part of that on the money aspect of it. So, you know, keep your attention held through that, and then questions at the end for sure. Hopefully you'll have some because there's a lot to cover. Okay, so the getting started is a part where a lot of people get tripped up. Really, the first thing to ask yourself is this? It's certainly a lifestyle. Is it right for you? It's not right for everybody. It takes a lot of, you know, can you be comfortable with a little bit of risk in your life? Can you work for long periods by yourself? If it's really important to you to be part of a team and to be sort of one piece in a larger process, you know, that can be something to consider. That, you know, some people really just feel like they are more social and do better work in that kind of environment. Another thing about freelance is that it requires so much task switching throughout the day. So, you know, for people who have like more of like a ADD kind of personality where you can switch back and forth between things without feeling too frazzled, because you know, you have to look at, you know, your accounting, you have to look at, you know, new business and marketing and doing the actual work itself. So like that wearing of many hats feeling, sometimes it can be kind of stressful, even still, but it's important to know that that is, you're signing up for that. So just be aware of what you're going into. And most of these things can be worked around. It's just something to give yourself a little bit of more self-awareness around. The other part of this is considering your health, and if you have any history of major life-threatening illness. You know, now when I first started freelancing, pre-existing conditions would not be covered by insurance, which meant that a huge portion of the population couldn't even attempt it because they just knew that they wouldn't ever, you know, if something ever happened, that would be just a huge expense for them that they couldn't even consider risking. And now these days, you know, insurance companies do cover that, but they do charge more for it. So if you do have some health concerns, it's certainly possible to run a successful business surrounding them. But that's something to incorporate in your bottom line and your budgets and how you charge for your time, because it's going to be more expensive for you to stay healthy. And that's unfortunately just like an unfair piece of how the world is, but definitely something important to keep in mind. All right, so then this sort of question is the next thing that is important to go over. It seems really obvious. I think especially many students, you know, the question for them doesn't seem like it would be what would you do? It's like, what won't you do? You know, because everyone's really hungry for work. You really want to get a job. You want to try anything. You're not really sure. You really want to, you know, just try it on and see what happens. However, if you are able to sort of pinpoint a particular niche that you want to look at, or at least start looking at first, or a type of work that you like to do, or any kind of client that you feel like is a good fit for you, or, you know, you know, I don't know, maybe you really are like into cats and you want to find a design for a cat sitting business or something, you know. If you are able to sort of pinpoint anything like that, is going to help people hire you so much. How you talk about it and then why you feel compelled to do that and focus on that particular skill to start with creates a compelling story that people connect with. So this is like why marketing works, is because it's like, oh, I want this person to do this thing because they're super passionate about it, or because they have experience with this, or, you know, it feels like it connects with them on some other personal way. If you can identify that, then, you know, it's sort of a cornerstone of how you are going to start marketing yourself. So there's more information on going through this process in the class, but start thinking about it now. All right, so next, before you move on to clients, is just some further learning around this type of thing, and just the actual getting started piece of it. Some people really need a push to get started. For me, I got lucky. My push came in the form of a layoff, and at that point, I was like, oh, freelance, what a pipe dream, sounds lovely. I'll work like 2 hours a day and do nothing. Like what a naive view that was. But other people are more the type who like to plan ahead and work up to it and sort of transition between their main job and their side hustle. There's more talk in the class on making the transition. How do you know when it's time to make a leap, etc. So lots of people are feel like that's a real barrier, and it's legit. So I want to spend some time addressing that, making sure that you are aware that conversation exists around that topic. And then courage and confidence are, and also imposter syndrome is something that is made real. And if you're not familiar with what that is, ask at the end of class. We'll talk about it. But many young designers or people just starting out in this field struggle with a lot of confidence issues. I know I had that big time. And, I would say yes to any job I could get just because I needed the experience, which is certainly, a true fact for a lot of people, but at the same time, like, other ways to kind of work on growing and building that, because that is ultimately what leads to improving your experience. And sometimes you have to do the things that you don't like to do in order to get to the things you do like to do. So, that all of that kind of works together to build your confidence in general. There's also a huge section on working out your health insurance because there's just been a lot of change in this health insurance world in the last few years. Just taking a lot of the intimidation and like mystification out of it helps a lot. So, all right. So now that you want to do with your business, or what type of business you want to start, you have to find people who are going to pay you. So finding the clients, right? So how do you find them? How do you manage them? What types of people are they? What types of business are they? This portion of the class also covers a lot of like client pitfalls, like what to do if there's a miscommunication, how to provide, what type of customer service is going to be useful in this certain scenario, what to do if they're really like breathing down your neck on a deadline, or, they're, being slippery for whatever reason. So there's I actually supply some like language and text around this topic so that you can actually feel like you're more able to work through your client discussions, and you're selling the work and staying focused on the work versus having them sort of tell you what to do, which can be difficult to work with. So another really great resource for this type of thing is this book by Mr. Mike Monteiro, who's I would say like pretty well-known designer. I mean, I say that with like an asterisk in my voice because it's like being a famous dentist. Like, I don't know, it's like, it doesn't really translate outside of our field, but this book I learned a lot from, even later in my career, just in terms of working with clients and people. And I would say this is like mandatory reading for anyone entering this field. I don't know if you've heard of it or not, but definitely make a note to look that up. I downloaded it on a PDF and read it on my phone in like a couple of hours. It's a quick read, so you'll get a ton out of it. So definitely do that. All right, so contracts. So now you know what you're doing. You have someone who's interested in your work and wants to pay you for it. Now you need to go over the fine print. So a lot of freelancers just skip this contract part altogether. Just sort of sticking with like an email agreement or a phone conversation, and then just sort of like, oh yeah, I'll get that to you next week and it'll be great, and then we'll just figure it out from there, kind of thing. And you can certainly do work that way, but I will tell you it's going to be lost business and lost revenue for you, just in terms of time management. And then the terms and conditions that come in a contract are also like little secret ways of incorporating more money and more profit in your work. So it doesn't even have to be really serious, hardcore language either. In the contract portion of the Skillshare class, I break down all of the legalese and help you understand why it's important and how it's going to actually help the business. And then you can rephrase it and explain it in your own words. And that feels a lot more approachable and understandable to people. So basically, your contract just needs to have a few pieces, and how you decide to write them is entirely up to you. But I would recommend you writing this and like designing this document and using it as a template. There's also plenty of people's templates on this Skillshare class too, so you can see how people have designed their contracts and what they have set up and what makes sense to them. I've actually simplified my contract since writing this, just because you know, I felt like I was spending too much time setting it up versus like actually doing the work. But as long as it has, you know, these 5 pieces, you know, what is getting done, like detailed to like the most minute degree possible, because that tells the client what you're actually doing, what they're paying for. That's how they understand where your value is. How it's getting done, as in how many revisions, when are the feedback points, when is it getting done. I assign myself due dates and I assign my client feedback due dates so that I'm more able to control the timeline of a project, so I'm more able to control when I'm getting paid. And then obviously how much you're charging, fees. Cool. So, and then the terms and conditions really are largely up to you. There's, I would say, 4 or 5 that are non-negotiable in terms of, you know, worst case scenario, what happens with extra revisions. The main piece of the terms and conditions are that there is some sort of like liability clause where, you know, you're anything that you're providing to them isn't going to be a copyright infringement, and that, you know, you're doing your best job possible so that you're not going to be violating anyone else's copyright. But then for some reason, you know, heaven forbid, if there is some kind of judgment, you're not liable for it. And then also like who owns the artwork and what is the licensing agreement that goes along with the type of work. Licensing is where the money comes in. So, and different types of creative businesses license their artwork differently. So for example, a photographer licenses their photos to be used in a publication. You know, it's this price if it's going to be on the cover, it's X price if it's going to be, you know, a tiny little sidebar ad. It's X price based on circulation. It's X price based on how many times someone wants to republish it. It's going to be a different price if it's going to be licensed as a stock photo. You know, illustrators work similarly. So if you're selling a piece of artwork to somebody and they want to own it forever, or they want to own the rights to use it forever, you can charge a certain fee for that, versus if, you know, they just want to buy it for a one-time thing and then you get to keep it and reuse it again in some other capacity. So because I mostly do logos, obviously I can't resell that to somebody else. That would be weird because that's the whole point of a logo. Same thing with a website. Like, you can use some of the code that goes into websites, but you can't just move the website and put someone else's logo in it without you know, some sort of process along with that. So my particular licensing agreement, you know, it varies depending on the project. But I generally give people what is called, it's not a full buyout because I still maintain ownership. It's still my artwork. I can still use it in my portfolio. I can still put it on the internet if I want to. You know, I get to market it with it. And I still effectively own it, but I'm allowing them to use it, you know, especially if it's a logo. They can use it for as long as they want forever, you know, but they're not allowed to change it. They're not allowed to send it to or resell that artwork or reuse it to someone else. They can't, you know, decide they're, you know, moving into a new business and then keep the same logo kind of thing. So, and there is a fee, there's a licensing fee that just is a flat fee that comes in wrapped up in my contract in addition to what I'm actually charging for the work. So you see how that's different than, you know, how the cost breakdown comes from, you know, the hours spent on something versus the licensing agreement fee that comes with it. So, yeah, we can talk more about how to price things if you want at the end, but that's just a real quick overview on the 2 sort of main most important terms and conditions that will protect you if something goes wrong, and then also, again, to help you make more money. So, all right, the money parts, and then questions. So these are the, I don't know, money is obviously like, it's exciting, but it's also like sort of just the beginning stage. So it's like, it's really, you know, you've put on all this work, you've started this business, you've told people about it, you started getting clients, you set up a successful contract, and then you got the paycheck, and that's really awesome. And then it's sort of like, well, now what? Like, what do you decide to do with that? So this is another really really important book for me. It's probably pretty tiny on the screen. The title of it is called The Money Book for Freelancers, Part-Timers, and the Self-Employed. Without this book, I would be eating literal crackers. Like it's so important for anyone who has any kind of variable income. This would be also really amazing for anyone who works at a bar job or any kind of service-based industry where you are existing based on tips or anything that you can't fully control what's going to be coming in and what's going to be coming out. This book expands on the specifics of the money portion in a lot more ways than what I'm able to show even in the Skillshare class. Plus, like, bigger long-term things like, oh, it's possible to buy a house, or, like, I don't know, whatever, like, your personal Shangri-La for your life is going to be, that there are people who live in this and do well and are able to, achieve for themselves the same things that anyone who works at a traditional salary-based job would be able to afford. So it also goes over a lot of the sort of like emotional baggage around money too, that I think is really important to just note that people have that and it's real, and it helps you figure out, what is important for you to focus on, like where those anxieties coming from, and separating them out from the actual money itself, so you can, just compartmentalize it and actually make more money because you're just less wrapped up in all this like angst, right? So definitely, I can't recommend that enough. Okay, so the rest of the money part of the setup of the Skillshare class talks just about the sort of actual physical setup of first your accounts, and that means like what types of actual bank accounts that you should have. I mean, at the very minimum, you will need a personal account and you will need a business account. You don't have to go to a bank and say, I need a business account, because oftentimes those, like, I don't know what, you might have a better look at like a credit union or a local bank, or even an online bank. I use an online bank for my personal account, and then I use Chase because I just always had it for my business account, but it's just a personal account with Chase. Like, it's not actually, they have a product that's a business account, but like there's so many extra fees with those. You're supposed to have minimum like $5,000 in your business checking account at any given time without getting fined, which I think is ridiculous. So I just don't do that with them. But the point is that you have two separate accounts that you're routing your personal expenses and your business expenses through. I didn't do this for like the first 3 years, and I lost so much money because of it, just because it's so much harder to tell and remember and control, like come tax time, like, was that coffee personal or was that coffee a business expense? Especially if you work from home, there's a lot of like overlap between where your home life ends and your work life begins. So actually having a online transaction record proving where your income is going is going to be way more helpful and definitely help you prevent you from getting audited. So that plus number 3, the cash flow setup between these accounts, managing your expenses, and then using financial software to track what's up with your business. Financial software in terms of like invoicing clients is really wonderful because it tells me how many days left until an invoice is due. I can set up an automatic reminder if a client somehow forgets to pay me, that they get pinged without me even having to do anything, so that they can remember to pay me on time, that kind of thing. So they work really well together just in terms of like giving you a better overall picture of what's going on with your money versus, some people really prefer doing that manually by hand, which is kind of how I started, just because I wanted to understand, working through it is, I'm not really like the best numbers person. This kind of thing is not natural for me at all. Writing it down on paper helps me understand it, but you can't get an algorithm on a piece of paper that tells you, compares where you're at this year to where you were at last year. So that's why, I actually worked with a bookkeeper who helped me, transition it to this point. So I was able to actually understand really how much deeper financial software can take a business in terms of just stability in general. So there's a bunch of them. Many of them are free. I use a free expense tracker and invoice service right now called waveapps.com. This, again, all in the class too. It doesn't have to be like a really intense investment, but it's something that, I would recommend you to do even before you deposit your first check. And then there's also some exercises around finding what your actual budget is. And when I say actual, like I mean actual, that it's not like, oh, I know I'm spending roughly this, and like, oh, I could probably go out to dinner an extra night this week, or, you know, I worked really hard this month, I'm gonna go shopping, that kind of thing. Like, because everyone's budget has hidden expenses that we don't see or just sort of are not paying attention to. So there's some worksheets and a calculator that will help you figure out what's up with your money. And then also, once you know that, you will be able to understand how much expendable income you have. So you don't know if you can go out to dinner and treat yourself without knowing what's up with your, you know, your bank accounts and your bookkeeping. So, you know, that plus the financial software, plus a good account setup, all those three things together really will help you be able to make much smarter decisions about what to do with your money, and then how to actually make more of it, and then, you know, eventually get to the point where you can start earning interest on this stuff. Which brings me to number 4. There really is a fun part in all of this, is that, you know, the best part about being freelance is you kind of get to design your life and your lifestyle, and, you know, what it is you ultimately want to do with yourself. So, you know, if you spend some time right now brainstorming your ideal life and like where you want to think you want to go, you know, you don't have to stick to that plan, but having a plan, or at least having something that you're working towards, even if plans change, you will still have saved and you will still have worked towards that idea on some level. You don't have to feel like you're totally designing your life for the next 20 years right now. That's like obviously really stressful. I'm not suggesting that, but, you know, like, do you want to ever take a vacation? Do you ever want to buy a new computer? Maybe you would like to buy a house. Maybe you want a tree house in Costa Rica. Like, I don't know, 17 kids, do you? Like, it's totally, this is the part where it's like, really, you can figure it out. And then, you know, once you have more of a stable business set up, then you can revisit your money book and start doing things like more higher level investments that actually will get you some interest and some real money to actually start doing some of the stuff that you want to do. Like, I don't know, retire early, whatever. So that is the fun part. That's what all of this is in service of. You can't run a successful business without being somewhat of a financial geek. Like, and again, like I totally get how that can seem intimidating, especially if you're still, you know, trying to figure out how to even make the work in the first place. But you know, just know that that's in there for you in the future, and that's pretty exciting to think about. And like, it really is doable. So yay! That is pretty much the end of my spiel. So we have like roughly 15 minutes for questions. Is that right? Okay, great. So I'm gonna put my face back on, so I'm not just like a voice from the clouds. I feel like I'm like, pay no attention to that man behind the mirror. So are you guys like all like so glazed over? I know that was like a lot. All right. Screen share off. There we go. Hi. All right, so yeah, we talked about clients, we talked about money, we talked about savings. Yeah.
Anyone have questions for Margot? I know there's lots of questions. How do you work with clients? How to manage that? I'm just fixing my hair. I don't have a question. How do you charge? I think the most frequently asked question that I get from all of my students is, how much do I charge for things? And I know that you all have questions about that. Because
yes.
You don't, you're lying, because I get tons of them that way. And so I guess I'm going to ask a question for everyone in here is charging. What
Yes.
do you do? How do you even start?
So I start by doing research on what everyone else around me is charging. So asking people, which is exactly what you just did. And some people are cagey about this, and I think that that's frustrating because, especially in light of like the wage gap and all these other, you know, economic issues that we have in our world, like being transparent about it is really important. And it does vary regionally. So people in Portland will charge differently than people in New York City, for example. So just asking around. But I say bare minimum. Don't charge.
The sound shut off. Hold on.
Oh no.
All the financial secrets.
I know, and then it goes silent. The world doesn't want. That's funny.
I stepped on the power cord.
Max, come on, Max.
The tiniest little click, and I was like, that's the fucking power strip. Okay. Wait, are we back with sound?
Yes, can you hear me?
Hold on. It's coming from the computer.
I'll just like do some jazz hands. I'll act it out. How about we'll do it in charades? Wouldn't that be amazing? God.
It says it's
Is the
connected.
sound not working?
It says it's connected. It's not doing it.
Should I talk so you can tell if it sounds working? I can hear you all very perfectly, if that makes any difference.
There we go.
Okay.
It's just. It's so weird.
Something's happening.
Doing this. I can't. That's so weird.
Just like
Close it out and restart the hangout.
Well, if we close it out, then it like shuts it down, so then it'll be over. So that won't work. Wait.
Ah!
Now try.
So, better? Yes?
Nope.
Nope. Shit.
Okay. Maybe now.
Yes? Yes?
No, let's see. Now try.
Yes?
No.
No?
Oh,
You have to go underground.
Which is the freelance link doesn't seem to be working. Either.
really?
Yeah, I
I
just
clicked
yeah.
both of them and they were working.
Okay, will you try now?
Yes?
Ah!
Okay, now I can tell all my money secrets. Yes? We're good?
Yeah. You're good.
Okay. All right. So where was I? Okay. So I was talking about how pricing is based regionally. So I would encourage you, if you're going to stick around in Portland, to start talking to some local freelance graphic designers, or, there's probably some sort of like salary survey that'll give you some rough ideas on where to start. But I always tell students and people who are just starting out that the minimum that you should charge per hour is $30, $35 an hour. That seems astronomically high to some people, but you have to, if you make more than $900 of freelance income in a year, 35% of that goes to the government. So already, if you are charging less than $30, $35 an hour, you are hovering around minimum wage. So this is a skill that you have gone to school for, that you've paid a lot of money for. There's no reason that you should be getting paid minimum wage to do this job. Like, yeah, don't do that. Some clients will push you in that direction, or, the dreaded, like, oh, it's for exposure, or like, it's for your portfolio. Those clients are all universally terrible to work with. So anyone who's going to be like a real respectable client, who's going to you know, appreciate what you're giving to the table and treat you as a professional should be able to pay you a few $100s. Like, you know, depends on what the scale of the project is, but, you know, otherwise, like, it's just not legit. And, you know, you could do it for experience or pro bono if you feel like it, but yeah, like, don't charge anything less than $30 to $35 an hour. That's like what I would recommend. It's like a junior level price for someone who's pretty new, and then it just goes up from there. So when I charge for my projects, I start by so what you can also be doing now to help you figure out how to charge is pay attention to how many hours it takes you to do your projects right now. So set a timer on your phone or a web tracker or any kind of there's all sorts of timing tools available. Sometimes I use mixtapes or podcasts to help me, you know, so I'm actually aware of like how much time I'm putting into things, because once you have a good idea of how long it's going to take you to make that logo or make that poster or whatever, you can assign your hourly rate to your estimation on how much time it's going to take plus your hourly rate, and then add on like another 30-40% on top of that. That amount is for mistakes or any kind of, you know, maybe because design is a little hard to control. It's not a scientific process. Like, you can't always be like, it's going to take me 32.5 hours to finish this thing. You know, so it gives you a little bit of buffer. And then that's also additional profit for you. So if you arrive at the solution for the project more quickly, and it does come really easily, you don't tell the client that because that's you doing your job well. Like, you don't want to charge them exclusively based on hours, because if you get it done well, you don't make the same kind of money. And that's like, that to me feels like a counterintuitive, like, conflict of interest. So I charge a flat fee for my projects. So I use my hourly rate as the base point. Then I add on the extra 30 to 35%. And again, don't forget about taxes. And then any other like project or research fees, licensing fees come on top of that. Licensing fees aren't always major. It's like, that again is something that I think there is no science based around that. It depends on your experience level. It depends on how, again, like your other lifestyle factors, like, do you have a mortgage? Do you have a small child living with you? Do you have like a pre-existing health condition, or are you only allowed to, or you can only work so many hours? Like, then you're going to have higher fees because you're going to be more in demand and your time is harder to control because of that. So all of those factors kind of build in your pricing from there. So and again, there's more talk about this in the contract Skillshare class, but yeah, so that's how I tend to want to charge people stuff. I will charge hourly for like minor, small additions, or small extra revisions, or any sort of like out of scope thing that doesn't necessarily add tons of work onto the project. But, you know, like, it's like, oh, we did this, but we also need this other postcard. And it, you know, it's like 2 to 3 hours worth of work or something like that. You know, that kind of thing. But I would recommend, yeah, charging a flat fee. And that way, if a client comes back to you and is like, you know, why is this the price? Then you can, I don't reveal how many hours I'm putting into it. That's just, you know, that's where I revisit the scope of work. So it's like, I'm spending, you know, X number of time researching, I'm delivering you 3 concepts. I'm delivering you X number of revisions, and then like I charge the revisions just based on you know, an hourly fee that I just include with it. Sometimes they take a little bit more, sometimes they take a little bit less. So that's another reason why you should mark up your price 20 to 30% based on your hourly rate to incorporate for any kind of complicated revisions or anything that you know, may you know, give you more work down the road. And I just include a certain number of revisions set within the project. At this point, I'm pretty capable of being able to accomplish everything within that time frame. I will do, if the project needs to be started over on the first revision and like the whole first round of work is scrapped, like, that sucks. But that's also like, that's what the revisions are for. And I charge my projects with enough padding that it's not going to totally put me in the poorhouse to do that. So, so yeah, at this point I'm charging because I'm at a studio right now and I have a employee who works with me part-time. So my rate is, her rate doubled plus an extra 20%. So she charges $50 an hour. If I'm paying, she's doing work for me, but at the same time, like I need to be also still bringing in a little bit of income so I can continue to pay her and still make a profit on my own business. So I mark up her rate so that both of us get a little bit of something from her, from the work that we're doing together. So I'm not just bringing in more income and work and giving it to her and not ever getting to grow the business on top of that. So yeah, but again, like I would say average mid-level designer in a medium mid-sized city charges about 50 to 70 an hour. So yeah.
Thank you very much. Yes, question.
What do you think about day rates? Like I recently read something about day rates, and it seems like if I told someone I'd charge like I'd scare them off.
Yeah, I think especially if you're working on site at a place, day rates can be really good. It just depends on what that actual day rate breaks out to in an hourly, and does it actually mean a day rate? So like, I don't charge day rates for my clients because I'm not working on them every day. But if like if I'm going to do a photo shoot, for example, and a client wants me there, I'll charge a half day rate because it's X number of time out of my day that I'm not going to be able to, do anything else with that time. So, that includes travel, your commute time. Yeah. And then, I would say like do research around, like, I know photographers charge day rates pretty frequently. Like, I would recommend asking around what they would do. Like at this point, like, if your hourly rate, let's say, is $100 and you're going to be at a place for 8 hours, like there you go, $800. Like, some clients may balk at that, but like at the same time, like that's the price you pay to be fully dedicated with someone for a period of time. If you know it's going to be ongoing, it's also no different than an hourly rate. It's just a lump sum, so I think you negotiate that on a case-by-case basis, depending on who's asking and what the complexity of the work is and how long, how many days it's going to be. Yeah, so certainly an option though.
We have time for one more question. Yes, go for it.
Digging up clients. We've heard, I've heard in the past about, sending out cold calls or cold emails. So how do you generate that client work so you can build them and make money?
Yes. What I like to do is I don't often do cold emails or cold calls. Most of my work at this point comes through referrals, which is probably going to be the case for a lot of you, because as soon as you start telling people, they'll start telling people. The internet is really good for that too. So sharing your work on social media, scary, but necessary. In terms of telling people, just reminding them that you still exist in the world. A blog, a newsletter are also really helpful. I also try and go to at least one local event a week, just for pure FaceTime. I will go to graphic design events occasionally, but those people aren't traditionally the ones hiring me. I'm more likely to go to any kind of other professional mixer God, I can't even believe I just said that, but you know what I mean? Like make friends with people who are outside your industry, because they're the ones who are going to help grow your business and be the types of people who may hire you. So, be social. I guess that's the short answer to that, because that can happen anywhere. You can meet people at the gym. You can, if you mention, oh, I have a small graphic design company, that's often what I say to people, and already they're interested. Sometimes people don't even ask for a card or don't even check my website out. It's like they're so hungry for help that it's like enough just to even have like a friendly interaction with someone in real life can really be enough, So, and then at that point, get their card. Don't give out your card, get their card, because then you can email them and follow up, because how many times have you given your card to somebody and never heard back? Like, that's the only way, is to get their information and then you follow up on that with them. And people appreciate that so much. Like, that is like such a good faith. Like, indicator that you're responsible, that you're on top of your stuff, that you're able to be, you know, accountable. So if you can do that, that's going to be a huge win for you. So, you know, another thing is like, I've seen like my partner Chad do this all the time. He just carries around a note card and just asks people for their email, and he just writes it down. It doesn't even have to be some sort of like, can I get your card kind of thing, or like put it in your phone or whatever. The only tricky part about that is sometimes I have a tendency to add people to my phone and then I forget that I have done that. So if you write it down and, you know, put that paper on your desk, it's, you know, eventually you will come across it again. So I haven't totally perfected that. Because I very rarely have any cards on me at any point anyway. So yeah, but networking and like making friends with other people outside of your industry is going to be really important. So I don't know, anyone else who you know who puts together events or parties or gatherings of people can all be possible ways for you to market yourself. And yeah, and that's all a write-off too, by the way. So because it's, you know, you have to be out in the world and telling people about what you're doing. So I like really have started to enjoy that kind of thing now because, you know, just you get to meet new people and you just never know what you're going to come across. So it's pretty cool sometimes who you get to meet.
Great. Well, Margot,
I talked a lot.
did you have questions? No. We ran out of time. We're all done. But do you have any like final words at all?
I guess I just, I didn't mention there, I emailed you another link to a blog post that I did that has some really great smartphone apps that will help just parcel little tiny amounts of money away from your spending habits. And again, more detail around that for just like really dead simple saving. So that is something to look up. And then I just really encourage you guys to email me if you have any more questions, or Twitter, you know the word, anything that you want to do to just kind of, you know, I'm really trying hard to demystify this stuff. And that means like, you know, don't feel intimidated to say hello and ask a question, because it helps us all to be as transparent and open about all this stuff. So yeah, don't be a stranger.
So good. Margot, thank you so much for your
Thank you guys. My pleasure. Good luck, you guys.
Awesome.
It's going to be great. I believe in you.
And so on Friends of Graphic Design Facebook page, she mentioned several books, and she also, with the blog post that she sent, I just added them into the comment section. So there's links to the books that she mentioned, to the blog post that she wrote about money too, so it's going to be easy for you all to reference. The links to the Skillshare class, they are up here, and if you want to write those down, you can. So you can go to her Skillshare class about contracts and the Skillshare class about basic freelance as well. And they both have really good kind of like files and just downloads that deal with both of those topics too. Thanks everyone. Next week is Lisa.
Thank you.
Woo!
I'm jealous. I want to come to that one. I love Lisa. She's great.
Thanks for coming out. See you then.
All right. Bye, guys. Thanks, man.
Bye. Yeah, thank you.
My pleasure.
Bye. Are you coming up? Oh, okay.